the Roswell crash caused a problem in our timelines that it caused like a split that altered our history.
It could. Well, guess what? It's time for break again. We'll be back in 2.5 minutes with Tim Swartz. This is Gary. You're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio After Dark.
He tells all the people that he loves them so. He comes on like a sage, says with him they should engage. A false prophet selling endless empty prose.
Selfish and cruel since his youthful days in school. His siblings he never did treat well. His self-centered bent was his dark side lament, with a focus on hypnotizing spell. He memorized laws to help sharpen his claws for a future for which he was bent. The time would surely come when for office he would run and claim he was just heaven sent.
Another politician has just taken center stage. He tells all the people that he loves them so. He comes on like a sage, says with him they should engage. A false prophet selling endless empty prose.
Stepped over dead bodies on his climb to the top. The highest post was his aspiration, but he forgot to read the fine print in the contract that he signed, which caused a U-turn to his final destination. He continued on his pathway of destruction and decay, never thinking that his wicked life would end. He never did take stock that the devil is not mocked, and all those broken fences will not mend.
Another politician has just taken center stage. He tells all the people that he loves them so. He comes on like a sage, says with him they should engage. A false prophet selling endless empty prose. He feels no lament for the lives that he spent. A jackal who thinks he can't be touched. But there will come a day when the devil's birds of prey bathe their canvas with his lost soul's carrion brush.
He was with his favorite call girl and his black limousine, doing lines of coke and drinking cold champagne, when it heard the distant rumble of 1,000 bat-like wings, an explosion which caused his ears to pain. His mind was filled with terror as the limo routes were severed.
Ladies and gentlemen, here it is, the most listened to radio show on the planet. Even the other stations are tuned in too.
You are listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio Network, from our compound to you worldwide, with your host, Gary Anderson.
Hey, that is me. Boy, this week I got a feeling it's going to go by faster than last week. You know what happened is one of my listeners just said, hey, you had a skip in your music. No, the computer is running Windows 10, and it started the music, and guess what? It started updating and kill the music, so I had to quickly switch over to another computer, which I got plenty right in front of me. Tim, are you still with us?
Yes, I am. So far, my computer's working just right. So, of course, now if I say that, that's going to kill it.
You know, I'll tell you what. I had Tim Cullen on. He was number 9 implant removal from the late Dr. Roger Lear. And I tell you, he had a landline. And as soon as we started talking about sensitive topics, all of a sudden it started breaking up really bad, and to the point it was almost not able to do the interview. So I had him switch over to his cell phone. It started out good. It did the same thing. And it only was when we were touching sensitive subjects it would do it. Crazy.
That is, considering, a landline. I mean, how often do you ever have problems with landline when it comes to a breakup or losing the call, static or anything like that? I can't think. Now, cell phones, they're a little bit more prone to problems, but landlines having problems like that's almost unheard of.
I know, and it's funny because I've had an ex-CIA agent on here. I have had a couple DOD people that used to be with the DOD, and they said if somebody's on a certain list or something, or they make a certain list, and then if they start talking about things, they can then all of a sudden things can happen. It's funny because last time I had him on, I didn't have that problem. I've talked to him a few times, on the phone, never had the problem. But James, you heard it. It was like really interesting. Every time we started getting into a heavy subject, the line would just go staticky and fade in and fade out. It was crazy.
Every time we got to a certain important things that maybe was a little touchy, it would just break up and you couldn't even hear him.
And then when we weren't talking about something that wasn't that sensitive, it was no problem. It was like an hour and a half of it. I'll tell you, I was pulling my hair out.
Yeah, every time. And I kind of wonder maybe he might still have an implant. Maybe that's even doing it. Either that or, like you say, maybe he's on a list. Who knows?
Well, something. Now, James, you had a couple questions for Tim before we get back into some subjects.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Timothy, do you think somebody has, in other words, the Corso passed the torch, and is there somebody still trickling all this information out to the public that's kind of taking his place?
Nope, not really. His son was the one who really attempted to, continue his father's work, but he's just he really has just kind of disappeared. I haven't heard anything new from philip-corso Jr. in a long time. It's probably around the last time was around 2012 that his son was out giving talks and things like that. So I think that those who have made the attempt to discredit Corso and his book have been pretty successful in it, and of course, Corso didn't really help himself because of the errors that came out in his book. And in fact, Corso had put together an updated version of The Day After Roswell to that corrected a lot of the mistakes that he had, and the majority of them were just small mistakes, misspelling of names, maybe some dates wrong and things like that. Unfortunately, he passed away before it could be published, and it eventually was published with the help of the investigative reporter Paola Harris, but it was only published in Italy and in Italian. And there's if you look online, you may be able to find some translated versions. I know there's a PDF out there of Corso's original manuscript before Bill Burns got in with him and helped him finish it up. But I think that the majority of people out there, if you would talk to them and ask them what they're feeling about Corso and his claims are, I think that the majority would say that it's just a hoax, that he was just for whatever reason he was making it up.
Well, one thing he seemed to do. Now, I don't know if you remember, but he came on Art Bell's show several times.
Yes.
And I noticed, like, each time he came on, the story kind of started getting embellished a little bit. I don't know if you noticed that, too, but I sure did.
Oh, yeah. And I think maybe some of it had to do with Corso's worsening health conditions, because, I mean, it wasn't too long after his book came out that he passed away. And I mean, and he really only made, a handful of interviews, Art Bell included. And like I said, some of these stories, including the one in his book where he claimed to have actually have seen one of the alien bodies not too long after it had crashed, just seems to be this. And I hate to use the word highly unlikely, but I'm going to say it was highly unlikely.
Well, it wasn't, but Tim, but wasn't that something in a warehouse or something, hangar or a warehouse or something, that's where he saw the body in a crate or something, if I remember right?
Yeah, it was like, I guess it was like the halfway point. It was being transported from Texas to Wright Field. Now, why it would need a halfway point, I'm not sure.
No, I think they have planes that would fly the whole distance. Also,
yeah. Well, and the story goes that it was flown from Texas directly to Wright-Patterson. So but see, that's not to say that he didn't see something, because the Roswell crash was not the only reported UFO crash within that time period. I mean, there were several almost right after Roswell. So he may have actually have seen something, but not necessarily from the Roswell crash. Seems like the Roswell crash has become the like the de facto catch-all for UFO crashes. If you talk about a UFO crash, people automatically think of Roswell, when supposedly there's been a number through the years, and there was a concentration of UFO crashes in the late 1940s and early 50s.
Oh yeah. Now some of it was blamed on like radar, that caused the Roswell crash, because there was radar, going on in that area. I don't know. What I kind of find strange about UFOs itself, general, okay, is that, when I got in radio in '76, I would get people calling up and saying, I saw a UFO, it was 50 feet in diameter, or it was like 100 feet in diameter. It was shaped round, or it was shaped like a cigar or a horseshoe. And then all of a sudden, later all of a sudden, it went from being 50 foot or 100 foot or 25 foot even to being the size of a Walmart store. And everything has been, I don't know if it's being embellished by people or what. It's just, it seems like even if alien technology in a short period of time sure took a big jump from something small to the size of a Walmart store or bigger, I don't know.
Well, I mean, early on, of course, people have been seeing UFOs since there's been people, but there have been all kinds of different shapes and sizes of UFO reports. Even at the beginning of the modern UFO era, with the Kenneth Arnold sightings in Washington. I do know that a lot of these early reports that were brought in by not only civilian but military investigators, if the report was a little too unusual or too wild, it was thrown out. So you're going to see a lot more reports of craft that were 10 to 30 feet, in size. Any larger than that, those reports oftentimes would just get tossed into the crazy file. Same thing goes with a lot of humanoid sightings. It wasn't